the moment I set the intention of working with the rose, the quality of my thoughts shifted. I just started to have these deeper layer epiphany contemplations that I just would have never had. So for someone who's listening right now, how can they begin working with the rose?
I would say doing a Rose Dieta to start to develop that relationship to listening. Having a sacred morning practice has been such a big part of my life.
What is your practice like? I love just seeing a queen reveling in the spiritual arts. Rachel Rossitto, she is a student of the rose. She doesn't want me to call her an oracle, but she is an oracle in many different ways. How does the rose communicate to you?
There's so many different interpretations of how the rose expresses itself. Silence is actually fullness. It's that spaciousness that actually allows for the potentiality of everything and anything to emerge.
I'm curious if you have any practices to feel like the full truth of the heart and not make a decision based on one emotion.
One thing I've been reflecting a lot on is what this steady heart feels like. And the steady heart is like,
just flow, surrender, let go. Yeah. Just flow, surrender, let go. I'm the one I've been waiting for. Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. I'm the one I've been waiting for.
Welcome back to the High Self Podcast. My name is Sahara Rose, and on this podcast, I love to talk about spirituality, especially the divine feminine, but make it modern, grounded, fun, and relatable so it can actually serve your needs. So I have been on the path of the feminine for over a decade now. And what that means is our version of spirituality is not about just meditating up in the mountains and having no desires and no sensuality and nothing, but rather to be immersed in the fullness of life, to move your body in ways that feel good, to honor beauty, to adorn yourself, to practice art and ritual, and to see creativity as a form of your spirituality, to honor nature, the children, the plants, the stars, the earth, and everything in between. And so if music, dance, healing, these are your ways of connecting to higher source, being deep in conversation, or even just in the own stillness of your being, but allowing those micro movements to come through you, then you are on a divine feminine spiritual path. One of my greatest teachers, unbeknownst to me, was this flower right here. La Rosa, the rose. So the name Sahara Rose came to me when I was 23 years old, living in Bali in a breathwork ceremony. And in that breathwork journey, I can't even say it was a past life because it felt like it was happening right now, but it was a version of me. And I was this young African girl, and I was in a desert, and I had the biggest, widest smile, and I was dancing and celebrating. And I was bringing beauty to this desert, to this place of nothingness where there was no opportunity. And that really, my lineage from Iran, forced child marriage and depression and just a lot of patriarchal abuse. And I was the rose bringing beauty to that desert of nothingness. And that's how the name Sahara Rose came to me. And so I believe in that moment is when I started to sit in the mystery school of the rose. And what unfolded throughout the next couple of years was really diving deep into my belly dance studies, diving deeper into embodiment, into ritual, into art, into music, into learning how to DJ, eventually becoming an artist, into creating my sacred feminine mystery school, Rose Gold Goddesses. So this rose just kept on circulating my field. And when I would look at roses, I would just, stare at them for like minutes at a time and just be like, wow, like, people really sleeping on this flower. Like, it is gorgeous. Like, wow. It would like talk to me and teach me so much. And then last year in Guatemala, I actually had the opportunity to sit in a Rose Dieta. So for 10 days, I was in stillness and silence, drinking rose tincture, rose tea, meditating on the rose petals. And the rose started to really speak to me. One of the first things she told me, she was like, trust the unpedaling of the process. I will show you petal by petal what you need to see, but you can't tear open the entire rose at once. Because if you do, I'll lose my beauty. Because what makes a rose so beautiful is the way that she wraps herself, the way that she veils herself. There's something hidden that gets to be unfolded. Whereas if I just tore this rose wide open, it would no longer be the beautiful rose. And it really taught me the medicine of trusting the divine unfolding in your life, that you learn things lesson by lesson. And we're like, is this my husband or not? Just tell me right now so I can move on, and it's like, trust the unpedaling, trust the step-by-step, trust the process. And by the way, it doesn't have to be so hard. Like the rose, it can be so beautiful. The path can be through love, to really walk as if you had rose petals at your feet. How would you walk through this world? Like, I want you even right now, if you're on a walk right now, walk as if you had rose petals to your feet. How does that change your posture? How does that change your gaze? How does that change the way that you show up? Whenever I go to an airport, I always have roses in my home. So I always like put a rose in my bag. And I just notice like the difference in the frequency I start creating when people like see a girl just like holding roses. It's like people interact with you in a different way. And it's like, I am bringing the sacred with me on this sterile airplane. I'm bringing a piece of life with me. And what's so beautiful about the rose too is every season of it, every chapter of it has its own unique beauty. The little blossom of the rose, so much potential. It's like a little crush that you have, or you're not sure where it's going to go. And is it going to happen? You're nervous. And will it petal or not? And then she opens up and she begins to reveal and finally reaches her full summer, where you get to see the splendidness of the rose that you're like, oh my God, I get why Shakespeare wrote so many poems about this. And then she begins to depetal and disintegrate and let go. But even in the dry rose, it's actually where all of the medicine is. That's where you get your rose teas and your rose powders and the medicinal aspect. You can create a rose tincture with rose alcohol, and the petal eventually will come back to earth and another rose will take its place. And that is life. And it's like beauty is in every stage. It's not just in the full summer rose, but it's in every single season of it, and trusting that every season of your life is exactly the most beautiful place that you can be right now. So I have a whole like notes app on my phone because roses are talking to me all the time. I'm like, another message from the rose. So I was so excited to see this fellow sister of the rose. You see a lot of people like with like roses on their Instagram. We're all like, it's like this unspoken thing, but it's like the rose frequency has come through within us. And you might be feeling that call right now, even through this podcast. And I discovered her work so many years ago, and I've just been following her since. And I love just seeing just a queen reveling in the spiritual arts. And she is indeed a student of the rose. She is a sitar player, and truly, she doesn't want me to call her an oracle, but she is an oracle in many different ways. And before we drop into this episode, be sure to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. That is the best way to stay up to date on the latest episodes. We've got this in video format, so if you're just hearing my voice, be sure to also watch our fabulous outfits on video as well on Spotify, YouTube, or the Apple Store. This is the best way to stay in the flow with future conversations, and also allows the podcast to reach more people. So hit subscribe so I can keep vibing with you on all future episodes. Now let's get into this one. So without further ado, let's welcome Rachel Rossitto to the Highest Self podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's truly such an honor to be here, and so beautiful. Everything you just shared about the rose, I was just like, felt like I was in church. I was like, yes.
Bring it to the rose. So I'm curious, how did the rose frequency start showing up in your life?
Yeah, for me, it came, of course, as all things do, during a dark night of the soul. That's when I was 19, and I just hit such a rock bottom. And my boyfriend at the time gave me the Mary Magdalene manuscripts, and I read this book, and it was just like the first time that it felt like the light came back on. And I was like, yes, like it was just such a resounding curiosity and remembrance, and something just awoke in me that got me really curious to start exploring the rose.
And for someone who doesn't know what the Magdalene manuscripts are, can you share?
Yeah, it's a book by Tom Canyon and his partner Judy, and it's a channeled book all about Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, and it's about their love. It's about their divine union. It's this beautiful transmission that reminds us of the tantric qualities within love. You know, that love is so much about the spiritual and also the physical. And there's a lot of beautiful mystery teachings in that book.
So beautiful. So reading that book is what attuned you to start following the rose?
Yeah, so that kind of, got me curious. And then it was really a moment. I was just sharing that I studied in India when I was in college, studied the sitar, and I got back and my parents were going to see Amma, the hugging saint. And I had a very profound experience with her where she has this moment in the morning called Devi Bhava, and she gives like a beautiful darshan. And at one point, she kind of passed through my energy field and my heart just exploded into a million pieces. And it took me hours to get up off the floor. I was crying and it really transmitted something very deep in my being. And Amma is like OG Rose priestess. She embodies the divine mother. Also Kali, she's the fierce mother. And shortly after I was like, oh, my name, Rositto, like it's been in my namesake since birth, So the journey has been unfurling, unpedaling, unfolding for a very long time and continues to reveal.
I love how the name Rositto even found you in your last name. So what to you is that rose frequency? How would you explain it?
For me, the rose teaches so much about how to walk the path of love. And it's hard to do that, to be loving, to choose love when you don't want to choose love, when it's hard. To move from the mental chatter of the mind to the heart, and even to the womb, to go even further down. And so much of the feminine teachings are really connecting us and unnumbing ourselves with our two energy centers, the heart and the womb. And not that the mind isn't still necessary, but really like that ability to listen, to tune in, to feel into those centers. So I think, for me, definitely the path of love. And, you were talking about the rose. And one thing I really love about her is she represents totality and wholeness. And she has that beautiful, soft, delicate, tender, blossoming, the opening, the reverence of the sacred. And then also the thorns and the fierceness and that beautiful natural protection and boundary woven into the technology of the rose. So for me, she's this soft, delicious, sensual love. And she's also this fierce, wild, untamed, fierce love.
Are you craving a more feminine approach to spirituality that honors the full you? I'm talking about your inner embodiment queen, your joy priestess, your wise woman, your intuitive oracle. Well, if you love the themes on this podcast, in my Sacred Sisterhood collective, Rose Gold Goddesses, we dive even deeper every month with a Zoom Goddess Circle. In these Goddess Circles, taught by myself and some of your favorite High Self podcast guests, we actually take the teachings here from this podcast, but bring them into practice, such as mapping out your past lives, healing your ancestral lineage, connecting with your dark feminine, channeling from your highest self, manifesting greater abundance, womb healing, wisdom, and clearing, and working with many goddess archetypes such as Isis, Hathor, Saraswati, Lakshmi, Yemaya, the list goes on. This truly is a mystery school that I have been running for over 6 years now and is filled with hundreds of workshops, goddess circles, and practices that support the sacred feminine within you. And we have our very own app so you can connect with other like-hearted queens all around the world. So if you're interested in joining or learning more, doors are open right now for Rose Gold Goddesses. Head over to rosegoldgoddesses.com. That's Rose Gold Goddesses, plural. You could also find that link in the show notes. As soon as you join, you walk through the 5 pillars of Rose Gold Goddesses, dive deep into your divine feminine embodiment, and then have hundreds of workshops available for you. Plus, you'll receive our calendar to join me live in our next monthly Goddess Circle. I'm so excited to have you there. Again, head over to rosegoldgoddesses.com and you can find that link in the show notes. So for someone who's listening right now and maybe they are having challenges in their relationship or they're single and they're manifesting partnership, how can they begin working with the rose?
I mean, I would say doing a Rose Dieta is a really beautiful way to start to develop that relationship to listening. For me, having a sacred morning practice has been such a big part of my life and kind of a non-negotiable in just tending to my inner altar and tending to my...
What is your practice like?
It changes as I change, but I always have an altar in my room, in my space that also changes as I change with the seasons and depending on, maybe an archetype or a deity or an energy that I'm working with. It could be as simple as just a candle, a flower, a piece of fabric, That's it. But I like to give 10 to 30 minutes at least in the morning to sit, to breathe, to journal, to meditate. Tea, cha dao has been a huge part of my practice for the last 10 years. And so I drink tea every day. That for me is a big one. Tea from China, from Yunnan, usually old growth forest tea that's living. A lot of the tea that we think of as like tea in tea bags, but yeah, cha dao is a ceremonial way of drinking tea, bowl tea with, side handle with living tea, and drinking it in silence. For me, silence is really important in the way that, as the feminine, you were saying, it's not just about meditating and transcending, but it's about descending and living fully. And for me to like live fully, express, animated, and to touch and feel all the beautiful subtleties of this human experience, it's like to start the day in stillness and silence allows for that celebration and that fullness to continue to, expand throughout the day.
It's so interesting because I resisted silence and stillness for so long because I was like, I'm on the feminine path, so we're going to be dancing and singing and, like that. And that was like, felt alive for me, more natural for me. And I had done like transcendental meditation training and stuff. I'm like, this is not for me. Okay. But with the Rose Dieta, you must be in silence and stillness. And so I would notice at first, like, just like eating in complete silence, just like sitting in complete silence. And I would just notice like just my thoughts, and I would like even sing songs in my head. And then once you just go beyond that, I just start to have these like deeper layer, like epiphany contemplations that I just would have never had. Because even when you're listening, I love music and it's so healing, but it puts you on whatever path of the music, right? You listen to a heartbreak song, you're feeling heartbreak. You're listening to an upbeat song, you're feeling upbeat. So it can be very helpful when you're desiring to create a certain state. But when do we let our inner state guide us?
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes we think of silence as nothingness, but silence is actually fullness. We learn this from the moon, the new moon, the fertile void. There's like this scariness in the dark or the stillness, and it's that spaciousness that actually allows for the potentiality of everything and anything to emerge. And so I find the rose, so many people are trying to define it and trying to like, what is rose medicine? And for me, the first thing I say, it's like, listen, like pay attention, tune in, like cultivate that relationship to be holding something and really listening from the space of emptiness and see what emerges. And that's when the messages come. That's when the transmissions come. That's when the guidance comes, is really from that ability to listen.
Yeah, I love that you shared that, because through the stillness, the voice of the rose can come through. And I know a lot of people listening to this are like, what are they talking about? The rose is talking to them. Like, are we talking about the same flower here? Like, how is it talking to you, or what's going on? So how does the rose communicate to you?
Oftentimes we think of, there's many layers of the rose, right? There's the physical rose. There's like the rose that grows in the garden. There's also the subtle rose, or the energetic rose that lives inside of our bodies. I experience the rose in my heart. And there's also the cosmic rose. There's a rose that I have experienced that is way beyond this physical form. And so it really depends on what layer you're tuning into. And you can start anywhere. You might meditate and have a vision of a rose, in space. You might see a goddess, like dancing and be part of that movement and that geometry. There's part of me that even thinks that the center of the universe is a rose, a spiral at the center. There's so many different interpretations, poetic or literal. We have no idea of how the rose expresses itself and why right now it's such a hot topic. It's like, I feel like I go on Instagram and everyone's talking about the rose, and that wasn't the case 20 years ago. And it's amazing. It's so beautiful that she's here and she's awakening. And I think such a simple way to connect with the rose is just to put roses around you, to have roses on your altar, to have them on the table, to take baths with rose. To one of the things I guide my women through in Temple of the Rose, which is the platform that I steward, is milk baths with rose, so getting milk and putting rose essence and rose petals in the bath and just immersing yourself in that frequency, because rose is the highest frequency of any flower, so it holds a very potent energy that is undeniable. It's like, that's why it's one of the most well-known symbols across so many cultures, across so many thousands of years. You can look at the Sufis in Egypt and, all throughout Europe, the rose is there. And because there's a royalty, there's a deep resonance and a symbol that is not just random. It's absolutely encoded with a very important message of love. And I think ultimately, I believe that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And so the rose kind of holds that power, that symbol, that love, that beauty that is inside of us. One thing I would share that I think is really important, there's so many books written about the rose. There's transmissions, there's teachers, there's priestesses, there's so much that you can surround yourself to absorb this information. But I really do think the most important skill that you can develop is the ability to listen and to bring the rose inside and listen from her from the inside, because then it never leaves you and you never need anything outside of yourself to access the teachings of the rose.
Absolutely. And I remember the moment that I set up the rose altar. So I just took roses and I made this beautiful altar, and I had some rose water, and I just really called in the spirit of the rose. And I said, for the next 10 days, I will be really listening to you. And so minimizing the outside noise. So that's why people are mostly in stillness, eating simple foods, not working with other plants at the same time. Because if you're also doing lavender and this and that, you kind of don't know what's what. But I noticed the moment I set the intention of working with the rose, it was like the quality of my thoughts shifted. It was still my own inner voice, but it was just different kind of lessons. And for me, it was a lot about energetic protection and boundaries and leakages. And it showed me so much of my energy being tethered to all these other places through my phone. All of these open-ended conversations I was having. I voice note someone and then it's in the ethers and then they voice note me back and then what did I say? And then I'm kind of all these open loops, going on social media constantly. So I'm curious what the rose has taught you or you've seen around boundaries, energetic protection, and leakages.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's like when I experience the heart as this magnet, right? It's like this electromagnetic field. And so when you live from your heart, it's like you can attract a lot of things. And so in that attraction, you can attract all kinds of things, right? So you have to be very specific around your intention and the way that you open, because when you open, it's like people are going to want a piece. They're going to want to attune to that. And so it's even more important that you have those clear boundaries. Something that's been really helpful in my journey is I got my master's in intuition medicine at the Academy of Intuition Medicine in Sausalito. And it's all about energy. It's like we are energy, everything is energy. And how do we navigate the world from that place of deep, refined attunement to our energy? There's so many layers. It's a year-long program, more than a year in cultivating. But there's simple things like grounding. When you're grounding your energy, that's a natural form of protection. In the morning, when you visualize the sphere around you, it's like you're kind of plugging up any holes. When you're removing other people's energy that's not yours and you're untethering yourself to the things that are kind of clouding your own energy. There's something, that we work with called OEE, our, original essence energy. So being full of yourself. Cord cuttings, cutting ties from clients, from exes, from, psychic protection, really. So I think any kind of energy, school lesson, course could be a really powerful way of tending to that. And then also just being aware of these simple things like turning your phone off at night, being conscious of when you are scrolling, having just clear boundaries in your communication around what you're available for and what you're not. And I think the more clear you are in what you are, who you are, how you want to spend your time, your limited energy, then you're more protective of it naturally. And I think for women, it's interesting because, it's like the feminine has this beautiful ability to be sensitive and open and porous and receptive. And so, as we grow in that gift, it's like the protection also has to grow as well. And, we don't want to have walls up, so we're never letting anything in. But how do we have healthy boundaries that help kind of protect the sacredness that we are cultivating in our relationship to spirit?
absolutely around the feminine spirit, I feel she also deeply wants to connect. And I feel that's why women tend to get more addicted to social media and voice noting their friends, because it's like back in the day, we lived in a tribe that every day you would see your sisters and you would weave baskets together and dry your rose petals together and talk. And we don't have that because we're so on our own that our only form of connection is through these channels, but it's not the authentic face-to-face connection. So we are not getting that same, like inner nourishment that we would have gotten from a real conversation. So we're still starving for more and scrolling and it just showed me, like with voice noting, it's like you're not even in the same time space reality. It's like you're having a one-ended conversation with yourself, and it's not even a conversation, it's reporting. Yeah. Hey girl, these are all the things that have happened in my life. Hours later, or maybe a few days later, they hear it. Oh, great. And hear all the things happening. And it's like, and this just goes on inevitably. And this is what like most relationships and friendships are today. Yeah. And it really made me aware of that. And like, also just aware of like, who do I really want in my life? And, I would just be sitting and looking at my apartment. I'm like, I love this apartment so much. It's so pink and it's like my place. And it's like, but do I really need it? And it's like, well, who would I be without it? And it's like, well, I guess I don't really need it, and then it's like, why do I live in LA? Oh, all my friends are here. Do I need to live here to have those friends? Do I need to be tethered? And so for me, it was, and I feel like that's life. It's like, you're a free bird and then you learn how to ground and then you learn how to ground. Time to be a free bird again. It's like, totally. Okay, let's go, and I feel my intention was true love. And it showed me how I had actually built all these walls around myself of like, I'm Rapunzel up here and no one can reach me, and it's like, okay, opening your heart means like getting out of this pretty pink home where you get to choose everything, and releasing that. But it's also being the rose and being the embodiment of love. And this is something I really want to talk with you about. Like, I feel a lot of the relationship content out there is like, test him, see if he's serious about you, like, be in that dark feminine, which is not even real dark feminine, what they're sharing of, it's sort of like hard to get, And I feel that following that advice is actually just going to set you up for relationships with very avoidant people, who want that. And so something I've been really practicing is to live as love, to act as the wife I would want to be from the beginning. And then I could hear the voice of those people being like, but he hasn't deserved it. He hasn't earned it. Don't give him wife treatment until he's put a ring on it, And it's like, first of all, I'm robbing myself from the opportunity of experiencing the love I get to share. And also, if me showing up as love scares that person away, then they're not in resonance for the kind of relationship that I desire. But I feel a lot of women have been hurt. Like, we want to love, like, that's what the feminine wants. Like, we want to love you forever, and like, I have so much love to share. And then like, was that my inner maiden in me that just wanted to love? Like, maybe I do need to learn how to, be more discerning or even play these games. So I'm curious, like, your experience with dating and the rose and all of that.
What I love about the rose is that she is unabashedly herself. I think that the rose is such a beautiful frequency, and like almost as if like, if you are truly embodying the frequency of love, you don't need to worry about anything. You don't need to protect yourself from anything because you're full, like you're full of the strongest force in the universe. So it's like, by being yourself, by loving fiercely fully, if that's what's true, if that's what integrity and love feels like, then that's what you should do. If you're feeling like, oh, I need to like, kind of like pull back a little bit or something, like, I think self-love is so important in relationship. Always learning that. Like, am I loving this person because I want to be loved? Am I loving this person because I want something in return? Or am I pouring love into this relationship because that's what's most natural? That's what's, my most authentic expression of myself right now is being loving, and love can look like joy and excitement and, or it could be subtle and deep, and there's so many different textures inside of that. But something I've been asking myself a lot is like, where is this coming from? Whatever it is that I'm bringing forward, like, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Is this coming from ego? Is this coming from fear? Is this coming from joy? Is this coming from innocence? Is this coming from truth? Like, where is this coming from? And that just orientation just anchors the inquiry deeper and deeper in my being, because as women, we have all these different archetypes and these different phases of life, and the maiden is amazing and she's beautiful. And I love the maiden. I really dance deep in my maiden. I'm not a mother yet, but that's a different kind of love. But I do mother the women who I serve, and I am, mothering to my sisters. And that's a deep frequency that I bring into areas of my life. In terms of love and partnership, I think there's so much out there that people say this is the way you should do it. And I think there just isn't one right way, and there's no script. And every person that you interface with is so different. Every relationship is so different. I find for me, my prayer is like presence and love. Presence and love. Can I meet the moment in full, true presence and with my heart open, and trust that from that place, whatever is like most like aligned will like come through. And I usually can find it. It's like a thread or a voice that comes through that kind of brings you into the highest expression and integrity of that love and connection with that person. But I am learning these lessons all the time. I am humbly a student of love because it's complex. The layers and the chambers of the heart are so complex.
Yeah, what would love do? And, love sometimes is opening your heart. It's staying with someone through a really hard time. Mm-hmm. It's, sometimes in relationship, the other person is more in need, like I feel like when we're like, is this completely reciprocal? Like, am I getting what I'm putting out? And we can get very much in our heads around that. And then it like, you become an accountant, not a lover,
Mm-hmm.
And I understand why those teachings are there, because I do feel as women, we do tend to give and give and give to the point that it could be overgiving. But then it's like, then we can almost get so in our heads around like, is this an equal energy exchange? And then also the way that we give energy is often just different than the way that the man does. So we're like, I hold so much space for him and I help him with his health and I help him with all these things. And he's not doing the same for me. But it's like, maybe his groundingness is his way of giving. Maybe it's the safety you feel with him, the providership, It's so interesting because it's like different seasons of my life, love would have done totally different things,
Mm-hmm.
Like love can also be walking away,
Mm-hmm.
Love could be, I love you so much and this relationship cannot work because I cannot love myself if I were to stay in this relationship. And it's a hard dance because it's like, that discernment is so subtle and it's so unique. And sometimes even throughout the day, I can change my mind,
Sure,
So I'm curious if you have any practices around, like if someone is making a big decision, should I stay? Should I go? Is this relationship right for me? Is it not? Like to feel like the full truth of the heart and not make a decision based on one emotion, one octave of it.
One thing I've been reflecting a lot on is like the steady heart. Like what this steady heart feels like. And the steady heart is like, because emotions come and go, right? They come throughout the day. It's like, you can feel on top of the world. You can, have a full breakdown. I mean, everything in between. It's like, and I love that. I love them. I'm a Cancer moon. So I'm like very attuned to my emotions and I'm grateful for them. But within that, it's like, how can we feel all of our feelings, but make wise decisions that are grounded and rooted in that steady heart? And I think the steady heart first has to care for itself, like it has to tend to itself. Am I overextending? Am I overleaning? Am I abandoning? Am I, in any way taking away from my core needs and essence in order to be of service to the man? It's like also knowing yourself and knowing what your tendencies are. And then from that place, it's like, how do you meet that person with honesty? Because I think sometimes in so much of what I'm trying to do being born in the 80s is like redefine these, Disney princess stories of like what love is. And, when you meet someone, they're going to be your person and then you're going to be together forever. And if it's not, it's a failure. And there's so many different layers of programming of what true love is and what successful love and partnership looks like that I've been doing so much unspelling or rewriting in my own journey. And I've come from two parents that met when they were in their early 20s and stayed together for 45 years. They're still together in their total divine union soulmates, So I'm like, thanks guys. Like, thank you. And also like, it's hard to have that as a mirror of what is possible. They are totally each other's people, but it was a different generation then, and there wasn't as much option and Instagram and traveling and things that like kind of created a lot more variety. I know you were married and divorced. I was engaged for 6 years to who I thought was the love of my life. I met him and I saw him and I was like, that's him. I want to have his babies. Like, I want to grow with him. He's my man. And I was unwavering in my love for him for 6 years. Like, there was never doubt. We did all the things. We were kind of, mom and pop of our community. We built and grew a lot of things. We were creatively, aligned, played music together. And there was so much, yes, until it wasn't, until the day that the universe was like, nope, you guys need to be in separate classrooms. And that was over 10 years ago. And it was the deepest, hardest fracture I've ever experienced. It was absolutely annihilating to everything that I knew to be true. And it's been hard to trust my heart again after being all in 1,000% and then having to walk away. And so I just share this because steady heart, it's like there's the steady heart that comes when it's natural and organic. With him, it was so easy to love him. I loved loving him. Then we had a year of deep challenge and I was in deep service to him and what he was moving through and shown up like, with all my tools and all my warriorship and all my fierce love until it just was not meant to be. And then there've been other incredible men who've come into my life where I haven't felt that full, like, yes, I want to do life, but I fucking love you right now. And this feels true and right. And our souls are absolutely meant to dance. And so I'm in this inquiry around true love. And is it always going to feel like that full fuck yes? Or is it more of this soft unfolding? Could it be a yes and then it's a no? Could it be a no and then it's a yes? Can you be together for 2 years or 7 years or however long and it still be like a successful relationship? And can it still be true love? And, can we fall in love with anybody on some level if we're choosing it? So I'm in this inquiry and I find that the more that I excavate my own heart and I create clear, steady discipline and practice in my life, these kinds of questions become a little bit easier to answer and to live into. And I have less expectations of what love is. And I have more just like curiosity and willingness to bare my heart again.
Girl,
after being shredded.
on the same path. So I've been, really sitting with like forever love. Does that even exist in our generation? And, sitting with the medicine of Wachuma, really asking this. And it showed me, my parents are still together, but I wouldn't consider that what I want. My grandparents, though, yes, it was such a beautiful love. They were always talking. And, I was like, is it possible to have that kind of love that my grandparents had? And it was like, yes. And you will have to go through things that most people in your generation would not be willing to stay together through. Like, my grandparents went through escaping war and revolution in their country, having to send their kids on foot to cross borders, their son going into political imprisonment, all like horrific things and between each other. But the way that the consciousness was at that time, it was like divorce is not even in your mind. It's not even an option, unless there's like abuse. But besides that, it's like almost like that's your family member, So it was like, they probably moved through years where they were like, maybe not so great with each other, but had to go through that. The biggest, seeing my grandfather go from like in the military in Iran to like a convenience store owner in the Bronx, New York, like, most women today would be like, you're no longer in your masculine. Like, I am no longer inspired by you. Mm-hmm. And like, are we willing to stick through that, stick through illnesses, stick through just so much pain and uncertainty? And like, that's what true forever love is. Stick through even moments that your partner might say, I don't even know if I fully choose you. Will you stick by them through that?
Yeah.
And not let your ego be like, well, then I'm out too, because we're so afraid of getting hurt. And so I feel most of us now, whether it's because of the individuality of today, we don't need to kind of stick things out. Before you kind of did need to because you were a community. Mm-hmm. And so now we're just like, well, if you're not adding to my life, I'm going to leave. And there's a beauty to that. Yes, of course, relationships, I guess, should add to your life, but like, really, is that what relationships are for? Then they're inherently transactional, you know? And it really showed me, it's like, if you want true love, you must give up the power dynamic. And that power dynamic is often what we're actually yearning for. I want you to adore me so I feel important. You know, I want you to lead me so I don't have to lead myself. Like, and so we're looking for a role mate, you know, rather than a soulmate. You know, I see so many women, they're like, I'm looking for my husband, or I'm looking for the father of my children. It's like you're casting a role for a movie, you know, and I don't think any man or woman wants to be casted for baby daddy or baby mama role, you know? And so I'm so grateful for my divorce, because I always pedestaled marriage, my wedding day. It's like all I could think about. The moment I met my ex-husband that day, I said, that is my husband. And part of me really had to mourn that inner maiden, because I don't think I will ever feel that way again, because it wouldn't be wise for me to. You know, for me to meet someone one day and be like, just decide they're my husband. We didn't get married for 4 years later, but it was almost like any evidence that was like not him being my husband, I probably wouldn't have even looked at it, you know? And there was beauty to that love. I think that was the grandparents' kind of love of, you are my husband. It doesn't really matter what you do at this point, because that's who you are. But then there's also, I can't even say a naivete. It's just like a bit of an anchoring in that. There's less of a flexibility of that. And I'm grateful that I got the opportunity to create new but deep down inside, still having realized that marriage is not eternal safety and stability. I feel in every person's heart, they want someone to grow old with. You know, like I saw this reel yesterday, and it was like these old couples, and they're just like laughing and playing with each other. And it's like, to have one person witness you through all seasons and chapters of your life, I feel is this like baseline human desire that is beyond the Disney. So I've almost been like revisiting like how much of those Disney stories are based on a true love that we just are too selfish to even embody today. And because it's a fantasy, but it's also like those myths are coming from somewhere. You know, like I love watching Bollywood movies, and there's always like some kind of conflict happening, but it's like, I do believe there is maybe not one person, but there are certain people that, whether they're your soulmate, your twin flame, whatever you want to call it, it's like your souls know each other. You are meant to be in each other's lives, and it's a gift from God. And I feel that when we intellectualize relationships so much, then we're like, well, this doesn't fit into what I'm supposed to have, what my standards, what my requirements are. And that's why I see so many people in this interesting paradox of like, the more spiritual you become, it's like the more like alone you become. Because now you're like, well, I can spot this and that, and I don't know. And you create this beautiful life for yourself that you're like, well, I can't be tethered to you now because you haven't cleaned up your shit the way that I have, you know? But then it's like, but then you're in that pain of being alone.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because, you know, this kind of devotional life to God, you know, was something that often was not done by the householders, you know, the priests, the priestesses, the monks. It's like living in these monasteries and in these temples and devoting their life. And it wasn't so much about partnership and family and doing home. It was really about like that solo, like you were really married to God. And so it's an interesting question of like, well, if I am already married to God, then what does the physical manifestation of life partnership look like? Am I putting too much into one person to be, you know, the spiritual met? Or is it like, can it be more simple? And like, is it more about like how easeful it is, or how you do life, or how you do domestic life? But it's, you know, yeah, it's like, well, can we travel together? Can we do this? Can we do that? And there's like so much expectation that goes inside of it. And it's like, well, what's really important? Like, what is of the essence that is like not the non-negotiable, not like from a list perspective, but just more like what is like it for you. I'm curious to ask you, when you say true love, what is true love to you?
I do believe true love is an unconditional love. You know, love and relationship are not necessarily the same thing. It's like, I would like certain people, it's like, I will love you even if you became a murderer. I wouldn't be with you, but I would still love you even if that, you know, it's this like, I think of the story of Sita and Ram, you know, and the end of the Ramayana, Sita throws herself into the fire after Ram. And that's like to devote yourself, to die to love, you know? And I feel we are so tied to our identities. I worked so hard to become this version of Sahara Rose. And I did all the things and I got it figured out and I healed my past lives and my trauma. And like, I can't fuck up this vibe, you know? The moment you step into love, that version of you dies. And so I feel that's why the rose was like, oh, you want true love? This apartment's got to go. These friends that you feel you need to stay right here, that's got to go. It's like, how much are you willing to die? You know? And the shadow of that, if you take it to the extreme, is just the complete loss of self. You already will have a loss of self when you're in love, but it's to become a higher version of yourself, a new version of yourself. Just like when you end a relationship, you become a new version of yourself too. But these are all deities we embody, you know, like I feel after my divorce, went deep into Kali Ma. I was like, I was the good girl. I was married. I was since 24 years old, the same person. And fuck, I got cheated on, like burn this shit to the ground. I'm a rapper now, you know, and it was needed, right? I needed to explore the darkness. I needed to explore the shadow realm. I needed to explore not giving a fuck. But I can't also just stay in that forever and be like, and now this is who I am. It's like eventually the next, you know, the Radha started to come online of like, oh, but love is so beautiful and this. And I'm like, but girl, didn't we just say that like we're independent boss bitches now? What happened here? And it's like, but like, I want to lose myself in love again. And it's like, and that's the dance, you know? I will devote myself to a love that I feel devoted back to. It's become so much less about who the person is. Before it was very much, he needs to be on a medicine path. He needs to have done the shadow work. He needs. And it's like, sure, I do think I likely would get better along with someone, but I don't fucking know either because I know a lot of people like that. I'm not attracted to any of them. That's the funny thing. You know? I'm like, why aren't all of the spiritual people together, but none of us are into each other?
Right.
Yeah.
That really lands.
And so that's why I'm like, I would have thought like, knowing what I know about myself, it would make sense for me to like be with like another spiritual teacher man, right? We could just talk about this all day. We can like go fasting together. Like it makes total sense. Like do the tantric practices, but no, it's like, cause I think love has its own intelligence. It's like, if we've both mastered the same path, there's no room to grow. So I'm curious, like, who are you attracted to? What is the archetype or energy?
Right now in a man or in
general?
Myself?
Yeah. In a partner.
Right now, I am attracted to someone who is very solid. Like he's solid. He's direct. He's in his body. He's intelligent and very clear with what he wants. He's the most devotional man I've ever met. And to me, I'm like, wow. Like really feeling the depth of that love, which intimidates me, which makes me feel uncomfortable. You know, it's interesting devotion. It's like in some way feels easier to devote to someone when they're not devoted to you. But then when they're devoted to you, you're like, oh shit, you know?
Because then it becomes real.
Because it becomes real. And so I'm sitting in that discomfort. I'm learning about myself that I really value being with someone who I have a very like real sexual connection with. And not just like, sex, but like love, energy, where it feels healing, where, you know, it's a vibrational heart resonance that happens between us. I mean, it's interesting, this whole spiritual thing, because it's like there are a lot of spiritual men out there that I'm not attracted to. So it's really interesting. I like practical spirituality. I like the word that comes a lot is integrity, where it's like the mind, the heart, and the actions are all congruent. And someone who really like is kind of like salt of the earth, like warm, kind, genuine, someone who isn't like being spiritual, but just is like a good person and who like radiates that and embodies that, whether someone's seeing them or not. It's like what they do when no one's looking. And just like the simple human values I find to be really sexy and attractive. Someone who like takes care of their body, you know?
Does this person need to have like a daily spiritual practice, meditation or breathwork, or would you be open to someone that does not?
For me, yes, that is important. And it's not so much that they have a daily practice. It's more like I see spiritual practices like you take a shower, you brush your teeth, even if it's like 5 or 10 minutes, it's jumping in the ocean, or if it's sitting in silence. I think doing something every day shows me that they're disciplined, that they're tending to their inner realms, that they're kind of cleaning, clearing, attuning to what's happening inside. And I just find that very attractive. And it could be gardening, it could be something, but I do appreciate when they're like having like track a lineage or something specific that they're like watering in themselves every day. Yeah, is important. What about for you?
I feel in a lot of like previous like people I've dated or something, I've always just felt like a lot more energetically expansive than them, and that I couldn't really be myself or share what I'm up to in the world because I always felt like it would be intimidating for them, that I would outshine them. And so I always felt like I needed to minimize or hide myself. So I feel the thing that's the most attractive to me is someone who can hold my bigness. Like someone that I can like spread my wings all the way out and go 10 times more. And they're like, I love you for it, you know, rather than in the past, it's been like, oh yeah, I totally love that you're doing that, but an undercurrent of like jealousy, because when you're really living your dharma, it will trigger a man who's not, you know, because they will see the reflection of, and then so it can be like, well, it's easier for you because you're a girl, or it's easier for you because you share on a podcast, or whatever the stories are, and just minimizing the work. I tend to be attracted, and for whatever reason, guys who are not in the spiritual world at all. Like for some reason, it's just, again, I feel like I've told you, I've really cultivated my inner masculine. You know, I've created businesses for myself, and I have this really abundant life, and I'm able to have 7 planets in Capricorn as well. So I'm able to like take a vision to action. So if I'm with a man who can't do that, I'm just like, ugh, like I'm my own daddy then, you know? So I can't. So I need someone who can out daddy me, you know?
I love that daddy energy.
So yeah, I am very attracted to people who can speak another language, people from another country most of the time, or whose parents come from another country, someone who can teach me something, you know, like teach me something that I'm like, I genuinely love to learn. Definitely a man that has a spiritual practice, spiritual beliefs, because I feel if he's like, doesn't believe in spirituality at all, we're just not going to be a fit. But I used to think I wanted to be with a man who's like exactly, you know, at my level of consciousness or higher, which how do we even quantify, first of all, you know? But I find a lot of people in general, but I will talk about men because that's who the gender we're dating. A lot of the spiritual teacher men are not always embodying everything they teach. And I've seen this time and time and time and time again with, you know, friends who've been in relationship with them that I'm like, oh, interesting, because you teach about relationships, but I'm seeing that you need more of your own teachings, you know? And again, we all teach on the things that we need. And so I feel like very early on in my spiritual journey, I had the fantasy of like, we're going to teach workshops together, you know, we're going to be a power couple in that. And now I'm just like, no, sir, you know, I don't even want to share about it on social media.
Same, I'm like, you're a coach? No.
Yeah. Or it's like before, like I was like, I want to like, like share about it and like share our love story and inspire the world with it. And I had this like belief of like, God, like, if you let this love story happen, I promise I will share with the world how. And it's like, it was this like, I felt like I needed to do that to get the love. And it's like, what I learned through the Rose Dieta was like, love is so sacred and it's such an intimate and precious container, especially new relationships, that it's like when you are sharing it on social media, you're inviting in all of this energy, projection, jealousy, like mal de ojo, evil eye, like, and it's like feeding a steak to a bunch of dogs, you know, and they just tear it apart, whether they're conscious of it or not. And so something, I'm not in a relationship right now, but something that I know for my future relationship is I really don't want to share about it online. And I feel a lot of women feel like, well, I want to share the love story, or I want him to share about it so people know that we're together, or like any of those things. And it's like really like removing any of the performer archetype. Whereas before when I got married, oh my God, I shared about it. I did like a whole wedding album and everything. I mean, I obviously didn't have the wedding for the social media, but it was like, oh, great. I can't like wait to share this content, you know? And again, I was 28 years old, but I'm like, I just so would not want to do that again. To be honest, I don't even know if I would have like a wedding at this point. I don't even think I would sign marriage papers. It's just like, just live as love.
Yes. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that because I also have had public, relationships and sometimes it just happens organically, when you're just kind of moving through the world and you're sharing things, but it does add a layer of complexity. And I think there is something really beautiful, especially in the early phases of keeping it sacred and letting it grow and letting it find itself and not having other people's opinions and projections and, imprints on that love and really just letting it be for you. And I think when you are such a big, person in the world, it's like, it's nice to have something that is private and just for you and not so public. I actually had an experience with this man where, I was like, I don't want to share about us, and he took it very personally and was very upset. And he was like, well, I shared about you and you didn't share about me. And I was like, I've had so many public, like moments that I don't want that anymore. Unless I'm like literally having a child with this person or we're married and they're in my like day-to-day life. Like I don't want a public relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a preference.
You know that feeling when you're so lost in a romance novel that the real world just fades away? The slow burn, the stolen glances, the moment everything changes, you never want it to end. Well, that's exactly what Dipsea gives you, whether it's a fiery fling of forbidden love or a slow, tantalizing tantric build. With Dipsea, there's a spicy audio story to match your every desire. So Dipsea is created by women, for women, and for the female gaze. It has over 1,000 spicy audiobooks, all crafted by a team of professional writers and top-tier narrators. And right now, you can get a 30-day free trial plus 25% off your annual subscription when you go to dipseastories.com/Sahara. That's DIPSEA stories.com/Sahara for 30 days free and 25% off your subscription. And you can find that link in the show notes.
So trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance, close your eyes and listen.
I feel when we take this feminine path and we become really open, we can become also targets for unwanted energies, for people with narcissistic traits, for people who can like feed off of that like really pure feminine energy, who can sense that we're a healer and they need the healing. How can someone cultivate that discernment of like, I want to share love, but like, is this the right container for me to share this love?
That's a good question. I think about this a lot and the part of me that wants to just go off everything completely. And maybe one day I will. And then the other part of me that's like, no, I'm here to be in the beginning you were saying, well, can I call you a rose priestess? I was like, I don't really vibe with like priestess. I'm more of like a student of the rose. I'm in service to the rose. But there's also a part of me that feels like I'm like a spokesperson. Like I feel like whoever came before me, the lineage of Marys and the Rose kind of sent me here to be a voice in human language in a way that the rose can't speak, to listen, to receive transmission, and to share. And so it's like, I also have to get out of my own way and just show up and teach and be seen and do the dance and may it move through me, it's not coming from me. I think that what I've noticed is the more that I clean my own vessel and really be an instrument to the best of my ability that is clear, then there's just less of that kind of noise. And when I'm like caught up in ego and I'm like in some kind of misalignment inside of myself, more of those kind of like funky energies reveal themselves. I will say, and I'm so, so grateful, in the 10 plus years that I've been running online courses, I am so lucky the women that come into my courses. They are amazing. I can't even think of one instance of having someone in there that like maybe once or twice that wasn't like a fit, but like the women that come into Temple of the Rose are so beautiful, so resonant. And we all don't know each other in the beginning. And then throughout the journey, it's just, they're like homies and there's so much love and people bring out the best in each other. And I really feel so grateful, and may it continue that, that beautiful humans, are attracted to this kind of work. And I think that if there is a moment where there is some of that energy, it's like making sure that you have healers. I have people that I go to when I do any kind of pilgrimage work, any kind of medicine ceremony work, where I do clearings, entity depossessions, cord clearings. Like I have a whole team of people that help me keep my field and my energy clean, because, especially when you are moving between worlds and you are, in the in-between, it's like, not only are you interfacing with like the human reality, but also the spirit reality of, different things coming in. So if you get an intuition to be more shrouded and more veiled, listen to that and do that. Like literally veil yourself, go into the underground. There's a reason why these teachings were hidden for so long. They needed to be. Now they're coming back up again. It's a little bit scary. It's beautiful that it's happening. And it's also like, and let's be careful. Sometimes it's time to reveal and sometimes it's time to conceal. And I think as we become more attuned and refined in our capacity to listen and to be a conduit, then, hopefully we're like tuning into what's appropriate.
Thank you for sharing that discernment around when to reveal and when to conceal, because that's so important for the feminine. Because when we open up, we become so bright and shiny. We're like honey, but then everything wants to kind of stick to honey. So I noticed in myself, especially after I would go to a dance class, I would like feel so alive, but then I was just like, I don't know, like the doorman's like looking at me and like this. So I kind of have gone to this practice of like, when I'm ready to turn the energy off, I put on like my big like black hoodie, or I'll put like a shawl over my head, and I'm literally wrap myself, which is also the path of the priestess. She was veiled. It was only in temple and ceremonial space that she began to unveil, when there was so much safety and trust and cohesion around her. And I feel that is the danger of social media, right? Because especially when your audience grows and there's people you don't know, it's like you think you're just posting for your friends, but there's also the weird energy lurking in the corner who has not earned access to seeing that, and that was a big teaching of mine, because it's like, I'm like, here I am bright and shiny. And it's like, I would do that with my friends. I would do that, in a room of people that I knew. But like, would I send that picture to a total stranger? No. But there are total strangers looking at that picture. And so it just made me start thinking of that. And like, we can also get caught in the fear of it. Like I definitely then was like, oh my God, like that's so creepy. Like what if people jack off to my pictures like that? Ah. And like, they probably do, like some people probably have, And then I was just like, oh my God, what kind of energy is that sending to me? And then I was like, okay, think about how many people jack off to like J-Lo and Shakira's pictures, like a lot. And like, they're okay, I guess I don't really know how they're doing. And so it's this balance though of like psychic energy is real, and we can't, in Islam, when my family's Muslim, it's like, it's only the veiling, right? Because they're so afraid then of being seen. But then even no matter how veiled you are, they're still going to sexualize you, So it's like this really interesting balance.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what I love about the Rose path is she's very sensual, but like for the man in devotion and in love. And I feel a lot of the sexual expression movement is just root chakra. And it's like, it's not going to taste delicious. It's not going to be the orgasmic energy that you want without the heart.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. So beautiful. So well said. Yeah. I think that is a maturation that we come to around when is it appropriate to, kind of shield and bubble up, and when it feels true, like what makes us feel safe? When are we truly safe? And saving those moments. Because I think social media can also be a place, it's tricky when it's your business and also you're, embodying feminine expression in the full range of that, which is like, I own my sexuality, I own my sensuality, and I own my, different flavors and textures of the different parts of my being. One thing as you were sharing that came to mind, I remember hearing a story about Marilyn Monroe. And I don't remember exactly who told this story, but it was like this moment that she was walking down the street and no one knew that it was her. And she said to her friend, she was like, watch this. And she just like took her shawl up, changed her energy, and started walking in a different way. And everyone was like, oh my God, Marilyn, 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 Marilyn. And just immediately she was like fully seen. And then she was cloaked. And I just thought it was such an interesting story around not only just physically shrouding ourselves, but just you can tell when you're open, when you walk into a room and you're open and you're like, you're available to being seen. And also, maybe when you're going through the airports, it's like being cloaked, like energetic cloaked, where, it's like you can be at a party and literally no one knows it's you. Don't even see you. You're just kind of like in the cut and kind of moving through.
Yeah, turning on and off your radiance is so key because, I mean, you see some people at the airport that she's turned on her radiance, like you can tell she is here to be seen, I mean, some girls wear heels in there. I'm like, bless you. I can't even wear heels for 5 minutes, but it's an energetic thing. And yeah, for me at the airport, I am like, do not look at me, and it's like, sometimes you just don't want to be perceived. And that's the part of me too, that's just like, I don't even want to post pictures of myself at all anymore. Just words, and then another part is like, I am here and they're both the rose.
Yeah. And how do you what do you feel right now most connected to it? Do you feel like it's both, or do you feel like you're moving into a phase of your life or business where you wish to be less seen or less of your personal life shared?
I feel it's less of the personal life and more of just the teachings that I get from it. I feel the social media world in our generation, like the bloggers turned influencers, it has been very much around like, be authentic. And what being authentic means is share your personal life, share your obstacles, share yourself crying, having the breakdown. And there's a beauty in that, right? It's raw. It's giving people actual human experience. Whereas the generation of like spiritual teachers before that, it was like you were on Oprah for 3 minutes and you had your book and everything was so poised. And so we became that generation that's like, I'm a mom with 3 kids. I don't know what's going on. And it's like, there was an exhale in that. However, it also became this like authenticity game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's very inauthentic. Of
yes,
like, I'm crying, put up my phone so people can see, like I'm super stressed out. I'm having a fight with my husband. Let me share about it to a bunch of strangers who are not in our relationship at all and are just going to validate me. And then by the way, when me and my husband are good, they're still energetically stuck in this fight. So it's continuing that energy field. And so there's something very inauthentic about trying to be authentic because you're presenting your authenticity to a third party person that's not there. So it's actually just another act. And also when we share our personal lives, our lives change so quickly. It's a moment in time. It's an encapsulation. So when I'm like, this is my personal life and I'm dating this person and this and that, it's like, now I'm stuck to that reality. And, and at the same time, even if you write a book, it's a crystallization of a moment of time. And I like to flip it and reverse it now. It's like, there is a beauty of sharing your personal story. It does make it more real, but I'm at this place where it's more around like, the messages and the teachings of my story rather than the actual details of it. I feel the personal stories that I have shared around my family, around my divorce, like those are stories that I've put out into the field, but I do not wish to share further stories on my future relationships.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. How about you?
I feel the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I think about children, and babies, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be the first generation where like the internet will be documenting your life since you were born, and they have no say in their faces being all over, the internet, like their first 10 years of their life, so I don't know.
Privacy is such a currency. That was another teaching the Rose really gave me.
Yes.
Of like, again, what a gift to be able to like live a life that's not examined. And it's like, even just the examining of other people, but like the over examination of our own lives. Like sometimes we can get so like, is this a trauma bond? What pattern is this? And then we're like stripped from the romance of it all.
Yeah. I'm curious, what does in your mind's eye now, what does spirituality mean like to you in this like simplest form?
I feel it is to feel into the intangible, the unknown, to notice the synchronicities, the patterns, the greater themes, to become awake within the dream, to be in conversation and dialogue with spirit, universe, to feel. How about for you?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
One thing that the Magdalene has and the Rose has taught me is very much that union of human and spirit, and how to be whole, healthy, whole, and holy. And so I think more and more when I think about spirituality, it's like how to embody spirit here and now in the practical and the present and to live in both, the mundane and also the majestic in one breath. And is that possible? And you could be like on top of a mountain and your mind could be somewhere else, or you could be doing the dishes and be like so immersed in the water and, every single texture of that experience. And yeah, I think spirituality for me feels like that widening of perception of presence and connection to what is.
Do you feel that when one is given the gift, the experience of love, to follow that no matter what it leads? Or do you feel that we're given different opportunities for different loves and it's really holding out for the one that matches the life that we want?
It's so hard because I don't want to have a jaded heart, but I do have a less naive heart and a more experienced, wise heart, I want to say. I feel like when we lean into love, like on some level, no matter what, there's going to be pain. There's going to be shattering. There's going to be death. And so to love is also to die. As you were saying, it's like when we get out of relationship, there's a death and a rebirth that happens. When we go into relationship, there's a death and a rebirth that happens. So no matter what, love is a portal to God, and God being like, annihilate the part of the version of me that I think that I am, I, right? And yet there is love that's eternal, that is inside and underneath all that change and all that variation of being, not being, feeling whole, being in pieces, the shattering, all that. True love, man, true love. When I feel into true love, when I really sat with it, it's like someone that you can be with through all the phases, all the chapters, all the variations, where it's like it holds throughout. Then there's also the part of me that feels into, well, if you're holding love, it could come in different humans, in different forms. Like, does it have to be just one person? Because I've had like legendary love stories in my life and I feel so enriched by them. And they're continuing, and maybe the next person will be 20 years or 30 years, or maybe not. Maybe it'll be 5 years and then another 20 years. I don't know how that will go, but I do think that we grow in love. And I think when you are in devotion to love and you're making offerings at the altar of love, that whoever is meant to take that seat next to you will find its way there. There's a part of me that often says, like, who my partner is kind of none of my business. Like, I've put the prayers out there. I've gotten clear. I've made the lists. I've burned the lists. I've, gone this way. I've gone that way. I feel like I've really like danced and explored. And now I'm at this place where I'm just like, I feel very surrendered in it. And I feel a little bit like, yeah, may it come in the form of this beautiful, awesome human man. And if that doesn't happen, then I'm still devoted to the beloved. And may I see the beloved in all things. I think it's a journey. And I think that we're collectively resurrecting this like essence of love that is beyond form, ultimately, is kind of where I've landed. There isn't a perfect person and a perfect relationship. And it's like that dance of like, how much do you stay and keep watering and nurturing it? And then when is it like, this isn't healthy? And it's the most loving thing to walk away. Like, all is possible. And everyone's stories look different.
What you said was just so beautiful and poetic and gorgeous. And something I've been really tuning into is that we're actually just experiencing God's love through one another, and I'm like, let God love this person the way that this person is meant to be loved through me. And let me receive God's love through that person. And I feel we vibrationally match with the person that is the kind of love God wants to give us at that time. And it's like exactly what we need. On the forever love thing, I remember, I was in a ceremony, and again, can love be forever? And it showed me, and again, this was a point in time, it was like 3 months after my divorce. So I don't know if timelines have changed, but it showed me as this elderly woman. And I had this like pagoda house in the jungle. It looked like Costa Rica. I had grown children and their children. I was a grandmother. I had all these like plaques on my wall. I had made movies and music and books and I had like short hair and I was very eccentric and I had a new boyfriend and he was like 72 and I was like 76 and
Hot.
right. And I was like so excited about him. And it was like, you're going to have different loves throughout your life and they're going to be the exact love that you need for that season and chapter. And it was interesting because at that time I did not even want children. I was like, why do I have grandchildren here? And it's like, again, I don't know. And this is not even the timeline I want to happen. This is just a timeline I was shown. But it was like, there is someone that you will have children with, and maybe you will be together for 20 years and raise those children together. And maybe after they go off, you choose not to be with each other. And it's like, and who's to say that that's wrong?
Yeah.
You know what? It's not the Disney princess. I think it's also just because human life was so much shorter back then that you did die with the person that you loved. That I do feel like deep in all of our souls, we want to like die at the exact same moment so we don't have to experience like a moment even without them. And I'm like, but like, that's what I want. Like, I'm like, I want Titanic, like not even Titanic because she had to live with it. No, I want like to not something that's non-toxic. Please, can they just make a movie like that? I can't even name one right now, but like, I do want forever. Like I want to see that person through every single chapter and every single season. And I know that that might not be as exciting, but like, that's even what I want in my friendships, like, sure, I have new friendships and stuff, but I have some friends that I'm like, no matter what, even if we have nothing in common, like it's just like soul fam and that devotion and that loyalty. So I don't know, maybe that template of love has shifted. I feel like we're kind of in the generation that was like maybe the last that even wanted that. I don't actually think this Gen Z even wants a forever love when you ask most of them. But I do believe that ultimately the desires within us are with us for a reason. And so if we're desiring a forever love, it's possible. It's just, and it comes with certain things.
Yeah. It's interesting, this like idea of sacrifice, and I was listening to a video the other day and the woman was talking about how like she doesn't believe in sacrifice in relationship, that it's not like, it's not a
win. Yes.
Yeah. It's an investment because you are kind of giving up something that you want, but it's for something that you want more or that's more important to you. So if what you want is forever love and to like do life with someone for 30 years, you might give up certain things, but you're like, it's okay because I'm actually investing in something that I want more.
I used to say that I don't believe in sacrifice and love, but I've even changed my understanding of sacrifice because I had a really negative, I felt like sacrifice was you win, I lose, and it's like actual sacrifice it's just a letting go. If I want to travel the world, I can't also have this apartment. If I want to be here, I can't also be there. It's like I've noticed in my own life as I've reached higher levels of being the embodiment of love, I've had to let go of some major things, my relationship with my father, because those were the things that actually were still implanting like a toxic dynamic with the masculine in my life. So it's like, how much are you willing to let go of? Because you can't hold every juggle ball at the same time. You can't, I can't call in the new while holding on to the old. And I do believe that's why like sacrifice is this spiritual, like now kind of more religious word, because it's like, there is a sacrifice at the altar. There is that burning of the ego. I just think where it gets confusing now is like, who are we burning the ego for? Is that person the highest person in integrity? I feel there's such a core desire in us feminine of like, yes, like I just want to like give myself to you. I want to give my body to you. I want to give my life force to you. Like I want to like have your babies and like live off grid together and like just be in devotion to you. It's like, fuck, I want that so badly, And then it's like, and then you end up like in a farm alone, isolated, and it's like, why God, why make this design? But I'm like, damn, I want that, and it's like, that's something that's like so like core and biological,
I'm curious, what do you think is the difference between sacrifice and devotion?
Well, devotion to me is that true showing up for something that is greater than me, something that I desire, something I aspire for. I'm in heart, I'm in reverence, I'm in honor, I'm in practice. Sacrifice may happen as a result of that. So if I am in devotion to this love, I may have to sacrifice this life. if I'm in devotion to this way of being, I have to sacrifice something. But I don't know, maybe we can change the vibration of the word it's like release. There's just a natural release that needs to happen. And I feel we just need to become okay with that. Often we don't step into new chapters of our lives until we're forced into them. But to decide, I'm going to step into this new chapter, not because I need to, not because, I was like you, I was just traveling the world for a year until my place gets broken into in London. And then it was like, Spirit was like, okay, and you're done with this chapter now. Yeah. Nothing else would have stopped me.
Yeah.
I needed it to be that big. To be honest, that whole month before, I was like, I'm actually really cold here in London, and I've decided I'm going to be here until I go to the next place. And so it's like, I feel it's like when we're listening to those subtleties, it just doesn't have to be as big of a thing anymore. However, here's where it gets confusing when you're in a relationship and you're feeling the subtleties of, is this maybe not the right relationship for me? It's like, you could, one, end the relationship because you don't want it to turn into a big thing, end it on a high.
Yeah, right.
Or two, you could just walk away from the relationship too soon and not see where it would have gone.
I know. It's so hard. And it's tricky because it's also like people say like the body knows, but I'm also like, but does it? Because it's like when you're like so attached and connected because you are making love and exchanging so many chemicals, it's like, what's keeping me here?
Well, here is something that a friend of mine, Goddess Ion, shared with me that I've been practicing. I've been celibate for 2 years, and it's been an incredible spiritual, devotional practice. But she shared, do not have sex with a man for 3 months, because it takes really 3 months to really get to know someone, for shadows to arise to the surface. And especially being in the presence of women like us, it can really be a magnifying glass for a lot that needs to come to light. And I'm really grateful that I have followed that, because it's like, I feel at the 6-week mark is when a lot of undercurrents start to come up. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm so grateful because I'm clear-headed. Yes. And it's very easy for me to walk away. Of course, there's the heartbreak and the sadness of that, but I'm not chemically bonded to that person. I'm not holding on to their life force. So I find that makes it much easier for us to stay in our own sovereignty. And then so after 3 months of being around that person, really letting your inner self be shown, at least you're less likely to fall into harmful relational dynamics.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's great advice. And I also really respect your chapter of celibacy. I think that's really valuable, especially after I did that after my long breakup. And it just felt like it reset everything and just helped me to really, just reclaim my energy in a very specific, way. So,
oh
beautiful.
My gosh. Yeah. And it really, again, like all of these stripping aways tune you more into the subtleties, even the subtlety of pleasure, the subtlety of like just placing a rose on my skin. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. Like the most light, subtle touches from myself, being my own best lover.
I love that. I have one more question for you. I'm interviewing you, but I want to circle around that because I thought it was very interesting. You were talking about like the falling away of the petals and like the stripping away that we do kind of as, you're kind of coming into the potential of maybe new relationship. What archetype? There was like the Kali, and then there was like the Radha. And then what do you feel like you're exploring now as the petals are kind of like unfurling, opening, dying?
Well, between the Kali and Radha, there were a number of archetypes that came through. Even before Kali, it was really sitting with Kuan Yin, really sitting with compassion, sitting with, I think that's what betrayal teaches us, unconditional love. Of like, you hurt me more than anyone ever has, the person I least expected to, and I still love you, and I will always love you. I won't be with you, but I will always love you. And she really came through. And then it was, I was in Egypt, so it was like I felt that Sekhmet energy of like, I need the justice, but then really tuning into, I was like, this is not my path. I don't want to be the warrior. It's not my best use of energy in this lifetime. And I really attuned to Heter, Hathor energy, the goddess of music and arts and creativity, which brought me along the artist path. I've always been very drawn to Saraswati energy. So it was really that riding that energy for a long time, for a year, making my album, stepping into that expression. then I start to feel the Aset, the Isis energy of like, maybe I do want a relationship one day. And like the alchemy, you know, the forging of the bronze into gold and really tuning into the way that her and Osir and Osiris have this like beautiful, like equal yet polarized sacred union. But really it's like, you can't formulate your way there either. I can't be like, okay, now I've reached the step of alchemy and I'm in divine union. I'm just like, and now I have to fucking jump.
Yeah.
You know, and that is how Rada came through. And it's like, oh God, but it's like, but I can see the red flags and shouldn't I not? And it's like it's like, you kind of have to like drink the wine again. I've been, you know, I'm Persian, so Rumi and Hafez and these poets, and it's like just listening to their poems again of just like, and love is a drunkenness. You know, if you want to be in love, there is a level of like, you can't do it through the mind, you know, and it's like, I can see all the ways that you might hurt me, but likely you're going to hurt me in ways I've never thought about before. And it's like, am I going to live the sterilized life, or am I going to like live for the very reason why I'm here?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. How about you? What archetypes are you tuning into?
Guan Yan is definitely my homegirl. I love her. She's on my altar. She's a big one. Lakshmi walks deep with me. Like that's a, you know, yeah, she's my sis. I would say for me right now, always Saraswati, she's there, but there's a part of like expression around music that wants to come. Like I definitely, you know, have been primary teacher for a long time. And I feel like there's like after going through a death cycle, I was living in the desert for 1.5 years. And it was beautiful and it was challenging and worked me to my bone and got me to my bones. And I was on a deep journey with Anana, which was so beautiful, and went all the way down into the underworld and went on the meat hook. And, you know, that was a whole thing. And so now I'm not sure. I'm still listening. I feel like I'm in between archetypes. It feels like there is the kind of mother-wife on the horizon, but I'm not quite there yet. I feel like in meeting partner might inspire that out of me. So I feel like to be honest, the one that comes the most is like Artemis, is like, I'm back in the forest. I'm living in this beautiful little, you know, kind of Japanese style, you know, house in the woods. And I'm spending a lot of time alone and go for walks, and I'm on the mountain, and it's like wanting to be barefoot and going to the waterfall and just being like connecting with my wild primal self.
I love that. And for those of you who are like, what are they talking about? These are all goddess deities. I will share some links to Rose Gold Goddesses, my Sacred Feminine Mystery School, her mystery school. There's lots of resources out there. Another one that I feel both of us are actually attuned into, which is very much this conversation, is Parvati.
Yeah.
So it's like the story of Shiva and Shakti, of, you know, Shiva, the guy that all the girls wanted, you know, hanging on Mount Kailash, like, I'm going to focus on my sadhana. And all the girls are like, how do I get his attention? And Parvati's like, I'm going to go on my own mountain and be in my own yogic practice and reach this matching vibrational state that he felt. And he's like, who is that? I must find her. And he left the mountain to find her. And then together they made love in the mountains and the rivers and the fields and created the entire universe. And I continually remind myself of that, because ultimately I believe that's what we all want. Someone who is embodying their highest self. You are embodying your highest self. You meet each other vibrationally, and then you create something so much greater than what either of you could do on your own. Because that way there is this sovereignty and this like holding of the self and the lessons and everything you've learned with this creation of something more. And yes, I'm sure Shiva did not want to leave the mountain. He loved being alone. And I'm sure Parvati felt very lonely up there as well. You know, I'm sure they had their own shit coming up. But it's like, but they held that without like, I'm doing this to get you. Of like, I'm just doing this and this might be for eternity. They were there for thousands of years, you know? And it's like, to meet someone in that, I believe is like the deepest desire in all of us.
That's it.
Yes.
I also love that he felt it and went and found her, because I think it's sometimes women can be like on the hunt, and I just keep reminding women and myself, like, be the honey, just do you, and like trust that you will find each other, that you don't have to go and look in every room that you go to. You don't need to hunt him, but hunt yourself. And in that, he'll find you, or you'll find each other. Also, when you were sharing, it made me think of the Vesca Pisces, which is a symbol that I love so much and is on the chalice well in Avalon. I don't know if you've been there yet, but it's that symbol of, two circles, two spheres, whole and wholly onto themselves. And then when they come together, it's like that beautiful balance of those two that create then sort of the yoni portal, which all creation comes through. And so, I've heard someone say, like, in relationship, there's times where there's like a little bit of togetherness and more like maybe you're going through a phase where there's more each person in their own space. Maybe you have a child and then there's less I and more we, but then throughout relationship, it kind of like ebbs and flows and goes in and out of different ratios, but that connection is there. And I love that. It just gives variety and an ability for life to take different shape. And sometimes, okay, I'm birthing a project, I'm working on something, I'm traveling, I'm doing more me, but we're still here. And then maybe times where you're living together and there is a deeper, kind of we, and that the I and the we just sort of like pulses and contracts and expands, throughout the dance of love.
I love that. And that really is the new paradigm of relationships when we are so much more location independent today. There is so much more traveling and careers just take up so much more time of life that in our grandparents' time, it's like you got married and it was pretty much all we, you didn't have your own car or phone, But now it's like, you got me, I got you. Okay, I'm here focused on this and you're focused on that. And I think the fear that comes up in people is like, but if we're so far apart, are we going to just drift apart? And it's like trusting that what's meant for you will stay, And if you taking space ends the relationship, then it was meant to end.
That's right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, such a good, juicy conversation.
So
I loved this.
Jai Parvati.
Yes, Jai Mata DJ. So where can listeners connect with you, learn from you, and follow you on Instagram?
Rachel Rositto is my Instagram, the Temple of the Rose also, and my website, rachelrositto.com. And yeah, I run seasonal courses. I have one in the winter called Yin, all about going into that deep fertile void and cultivating self in the deep dark winter. And then Unfurl, which is all about springtime and opening and expressing more of that maiden, spring awakening energy. A little one in the summer called Rose Water. In the fall, it's called Velvet. It's all about getting witchy and deep into the cultivation of our magic and our relationship to the archetype of the enchantress.
Love the seasonality of that. And we will have those links in the show notes. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is an incredible episode to share with your friends, both listen to it and have a deeper conversation of what archetype are you in right now? And what does spirituality mean to you? Rachel's asking me amazing questions too. Like, this was so great. You were like with us hanging out. This was like true spiritual sister convo right here. So I'm so curious your thoughts. Please share with me in the YouTube comments, share with me in the reviews on the podcast app. And as a free gift, I will send you my womb meditation. So just leave a review, share with me what you loved, and take a screenshot of it and email it over to me at sahara@IamSaharaRose.com. You can find that email and all of the links mentioned today in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it so you can stay up to date for future episodes. Thank you so much again for tuning in. May the rose be with you, and I'll see you in the next one.
Trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your eyes and listen. Let go. So trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your